Hello and welcome to our series of commercial conflict conversations. In this episode, we're joined by Nina Scales. Nina is a senior media and entertainment executive working with world-class content businesses, advising them on how to grow successful media franchises on an international scale. She's had several leadership positions, most recently with Hasbro, where she negotiated complex partnerships and distribution agreements with the likes of, wait for it, Amazon, Netflix, Warner, HBO, Disney and YouTube. I think it's fair to say that Nina's seen her fair share of commercial conflict. Hi Nina, great to have you here with us today.
Hi, hello.
So let's get straight into it. I'd love to know what you think about the term, if you like, or what the words commercial conflict means to you.
So I've been thinking about this quite a lot, obviously, and it's something that I have experienced in many different guises, internally and externally.
Yeah.
And it definitely feels like it's an imbalance between different outcomes for different parties. So I'll give you an example. Internal conflict. So in one of my roles, we were brought in as a division, a new division to kind of disrupt the status quo, so to speak.
Right.
To take an existing focus in a new direction. So a whole new team came in, we had a different expertise, a different skill set, and the focus, the idea was to change, to slowly introduce change with a view to growth. Now, what happened was all our interactions with our colleagues in different divisions, they started to become a bit hostile. The role was really stressful. The team was stressed. It became a real them and us kind of situation. And we felt we had no influence, no voice. We were, banging our heads against a brick wall. And after a while, we had wins, but we weren't really achieving what we wanted to achieve. So we stepped back and thought, well, what are we doing? How can we have some influence when we're so small and we're having to change the whole direction of the company, and they're so big and there's so many of them? So we decided to change our approach. And one of the first things we started to listen. So in our meetings with our colleagues, we would actually ask them to explain what they're doing. What do they need? And we empathize. We agreed with them. We understood. We made them feel that we were on their side. We started to question a little bit, to try and get down to the crux of what was going on, and to understand. And then at the same time, we then started to share what our goals were, what we needed to do, and why. So we sort of started to create this sort of listening culture. And as things sort of grew, we felt that we would hear in meetings that people would say, but Nina's team, they have to achieve this, but we want to do this. So they started to take on board that we weren't the bad guys. We were all on the same side. We were all trying to move the business forward. We were all trying to kind of disrupt, but in a positive way. And actually results really, really improved.
So your objective really was to get around the same side of the table as the
all to be on the same side of the table. There wasn't an enemy. It wasn't a them and us situation. We were all in it together.
Yeah.
And we should share our knowledge and explain what we were doing. And it wasn't a threat to them. This was actually a good thing, and to explain why. And likewise, we needed to understand what they were afraid of, why it wasn't working for them, what were their barriers. And I think, from an internal point of view, because often we think of conflict as very much external. So within a context of within a big organization, I think you can apply a lot of the same listening and influencing skills as you can when you're external.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you find that there were sort of individuals that were perhaps more or less adversarial in those engagements?
Yes, I think people were threatened because obviously you're worrying about your own job, your own position. Where does this lead us? Or you feeling you're out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
I've been trained this way, and this is what I have to do, and I don't really understand what you're talking about.
Sure.
So yes, I don't. yes, it felt, before we changed our approach, it felt like we had certain barriers.
Right.
But actually, talking about influencing, the other thing we worked on, we realized that we were a small band of brothers against what we felt was this huge team of people.
Right.
Where could we influence? Who do we have relationships with elsewhere in the organization where we could share our mission and get them on board? So in turn, they would start to talk about us in their meetings.
Right.
And again, it was literally looking on a piece of paper, listing out who's out there, who do we know, how could we approach it, and could we have a coffee? Could we these were pre-COVID days. Could we have a coffee? Could we have a 5-minute meeting? Or if I bumped into them by the water cooler, oh, have you got a sec? I just wanted to explain to you what we've got to do, what's going on, and just influencing around as well. That made a huge difference.
Can you draw any similar sort of comparisons with external sort of commercial deals that you've been involved in, when people on the other side of the table are you're buying from or selling to?
Absolutely. External conflict is, we're all, if you're selling, if you're dealing with clients, if you're client facing, there is external conflict. It's, we have our position and our goals, and they have their position and their goals. So when you're negotiating a deal, any deal, whether it's a tiny one or a multi-billion-dollar contract with a household name, essentially, if we're both negotiating, we both want something from each other. We're already engaged, we're already halfway there, because we wouldn't be talking if we weren't in this sort of negotiating position.
Yeah.
So I think the days, well, certainly in a sort of a media and entertainment environment where it's very people focused, it's not a hardcore traditional negotiation of a take it or leave it. I have seen that happen, and I don't think that's particularly successful. What I've always found works is to, again, similar to internal, listen, ask the client, what do they need to do? What do they have to achieve? What are their priorities? Is it about revenue, or is it about something else? Do they have a time frame that's really important? Is it about revenue? Is it about profit? Is it about, what are their ultimate goals in our order of priority? What do they really need to do? Sure. And again, sharing my goals has also been very important, so they understand. So what we're always trying to do is find common ground and find solutions to the problem that work for both of us. And I do believe the more we kind of are sharing and talking and listening and telling everyone that we are listening, I've heard you, and I'm going to repeat what you've just said because I've heard you. And they'll go, okay, she's on my side, she gets it. Yeah. Preparation is key. In all meetings, preparation is key. And another thing I found, and I think this is similar to internal, is talk to people. Get away from the email. Get away from hiding behind technology. I've always found you can get so far by picking up the phone. Yeah. 5-minute conversation, and you get rid of a lot of the hostility, because emails can be misread. Yeah. Texts can be misread, and they also take a long time. You can spend hours drafting the perfect email, and it doesn't, and all your client will see is the one line they didn't like. Yeah. So I'm a big believer in talk.
So can I ask you, we've been doing quite a lot of work around the sort of natural reactions to certain behaviours, to adversarial behaviour in particular, and there's a phrase that I'm sure you're familiar with of fight or flight in reaction to that. What would you, just thinking about you and perhaps as your experience built in this kind of territory, what would have been your immediate reaction to sort of adversarial behaviour? Are you a fight or a flight person?
Oh, by nature, I hate conflict.
Right.
It's definitely one of my weaknesses. Okay. But obviously, I've had to learn to stay in it and not run away. One of my tricks I've learned is to sit in the silence. And sometimes you'll be like, oh my goodness, what have they just said? That was not what I need. Oh, how do I come back from that? And actually to just let it be quiet and sit there, because it might feel uncomfortable, but actually it gives you time to pause, gives them time to pause, and you can kind of think, how do you go back in and yeah, to tone it all down. But I think sometimes just pausing, taking a moment to calm yourself down as well.
Yeah.
If you're feeling like, how do I get out of it? How do I get out of it? Tried a different approach. But yes, I'm not a lover of that situation at
no,
all.
of course not. No, and nobody likes that. But some people will use that style and will kind of railroad situations.
Yeah, and it's really unpleasant when you have someone very aggressive. You know, I have my style of negotiation or dealing with internal and external clients, and everyone has grown up in different schools and has a different approach. And I suppose you've got to try and understand the person you're dealing with. You know, how do they listen? How do you get someone who's closed and literally, I just need to do a good deal. Give me a deal. What are they looking for? What is the sort of, you know, the modus operandi of this person? You know, what's their style? What will make them feel they've got a good deal? So I suppose it's that emotional side of things, trying to look at the whole.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes you are going to have people you're just not going to get on with and you're not going to click with, but you still have to kind of, and you know, I suppose you adjust your behavior accordingly.
And how do you get better at that?
Practice.
Do you think, I mean, it is experience and reflection on a situation?
We did a lot of coaching. I coached my team a lot when they would find that they had a personality clash with someone.
Right.
And I suppose it's trying to look at what is it triggering in yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can't change other people, you can only change your own reaction. So I think for reflection after, why have I frozen? Why am I shaking? Why am I so nervous with this person? What is actually going on, and what's it triggering in me? And from that, you can perhaps, I don't know, whether you work with someone, you know, talk to a colleague, you know, to see how you can change your behavior.
And do you think that that reaction is driven by the seniority of the other person, or the power and influence of the other person, or perhaps just bad behavior on their part?
Seniority, I think, definitely comes into it.
Yeah.
And I do think there is still that imbalance definitely going on.
Yeah.
I mean, you can also have a clash with someone. Your values are different for someone else's values. You're not going to get on with everybody.
Yeah.
So I do think that they work in parallel, but the whole the seniority thing can have a negative impact.
Yeah.
And we have a responsibility, therefore, if you are in a senior position, to try and manage that.
Can we talk about emotional intelligence and what you might sort of understand by that?
Everyone's coming to the table with their own goals and objectives and personalities.
Yeah.
And that, you know, we all want to get to the same outcome, but we might demonstrate it in different ways. And actually, a deeper understanding of how we work as humans, you know, as individuals, can actually get to a much more positive outcome and a more pleasurable process. You can always find something, call me naive, but I think you can always find something positive in a person. You can always find something of common ground, even if it's purely that we both are doing a similar job. But the more we move away from this sort of dictatorial, rigid, hard approach,
Yeah.
I think the better we'll all feel, and the more positive we are, and builds confidence.
Yeah.
And confidence will get us better results.
Would you say you were emotionally intelligent?
Oh, I don't know. Yes, of course I am. I'm very emotionally intelligent.
How would you say that manifests itself in these sort of commercial contexts?
I've started to really check myself on being judgmental. And I think sometimes in the past we've jumped to conclusions about a person. And I think I've learned now that actually this is not the right approach. I need to leave my judgment and biases at the door.
I mean, I'm assuming that most of the sorts of deals that you were involved in or have been involved in the sort of media and entertainment industry are typically long term, right?
Yeah, so I work in a relationships business.
Right.
And it's a small industry, so you want to, do your best because your reputation is on the line. But definitely, it's about building trust. Well, this is my position. There's no point in just forcing someone to take something and to do the deal just to get it over the line and have them go, oh God, I don't want to work with that person, or under deliver. So for me, every single business relationship is the beginning of something long term.
Right.
Because if you solve a problem for your client, they're going to want you to solve future problems, and they'll come to you, they'll trust you. Sometimes you might have something that you're trying to sell, or a deal you're trying to close. It might not be the best deal for them. They might have other similar deals, but the chances are they'll say, actually, she delivers, I trust her, she's not going to rip me off, I want to work with her, rather than, so I really believe that everything, and same internally, we're humans, we need to build long-term partnerships. You don't know where people are going to end up. They move around. The job industry is very flexible these days.
Yeah.
There's the old saying, be nice to the elevator man, because you never know when they're going to be the boss. It is all about relationships and being a good partner.
How would you define success from a conflict situation, from a deal that you're doing?
I suppose success is when all parties walk away with a smile on their face, feeling that they got a good deal, or they got what they needed. I don't feel success is when you feel like, oh, I nailed them, I really ripped them off. Do you feel good, really? I mean, it's certainly not going to lead to a long-term partnership. It might give you a little bit of a spike, but success is everyone walking away feeling that this was a good deal, seeing it as a partnership. This is going to work for everyone long term. And then success is repeat business.
Yeah.
When they come back for more.
Diversity and inclusion. How important is it in specifically in commercial conflict in your experience?
Certainly I've always had a global remit. My teams have always been culturally very diverse, because we need to in order to structure a really good deal, we need all different kinds of points of view and input. I feel it's really important to have different ages as well. You can't all be sort of sitting in one pot. Difference of opinions will come together with really great proposals, great pitches, ingenious ideas. There's so many things I'm not going to think about that someone in my team might. So it's a business that is just very diverse by nature because we're global. In a creative situation, I think the media and entertainment industry do a fantastic job. They're really stepping up. I've spent a few years working in kids TV, and obviously the more different voices we have in the creative process, the more that's going to come out in the actual content and storytelling. And there is a responsibility to the new generation to have multiple voices and difference of opinion. And again, to check our biases as well as we go forward.
The need for diversity and inclusion has been driven by bad behavior, essentially. I've experienced and seen male-dominated situations and some fairly poor behavior from, essentially kind of bullies in commercial context.
Yeah.
Have you seen or experienced that?
Yes, many times. My biggest bugbear is a meeting where the guys start talking about football straight away. And it's a brilliant way of trying to push the females out of the conversation. I've been at meetings face to face where the client will literally direct everything at the man at the table. Even if I'm the senior person there, it's just an assumption that I'm going to talk to them. And you know, it's infuriating. And sometimes, and I, in the old days, I used to play along. I learned quite a lot about football, and I try and get involved. But actually, now I just do what Sheryl Sandberg advises, and that's lean in and just kind of change the conversation, make it, you know, be quite assertive in a polite way. And afterwards, I called it out, and you know, in an as appropriate, obviously. But if you actually call it out and say, "Did you notice that? It's really alienating." And I think sometimes the men in this particular situation, it's been men in the room aren't aware of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And actually, by calling it out, I have seen behaviour change. But it's still going on. It feels much better than it was. I worked in the sports industry for a while. You can imagine, you know, I got used to innuendo conversations that were all very unintentionally exclusive to men
Yeah.
only.
Yeah.
And actually, but things are changing. I can
Yeah.
feel that through education, and companies are training their people. There's a lot more awareness now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's my other bugbear is the whole seniority thing. You know, you'll be working on a deal and then suddenly it's no, it's got to go top to top. I have a real thing about that term, top to top. You know, often the senior person has absolutely no idea of what the detail is, but there's a sort of an arrogance or an ability that unless it's the senior person in the entire company, we're not going to proceed. And particularly in the media and entertainment industry, people don't get trained. People get promoted into positions because they're very good creatives, or they're very good at winning pitches. That doesn't make them good people or good negotiators or good business people. For more training and more you know, guidance before you promote people, because actually you can get stuck and businesses can come unstuck and people can leave. You know, you have a retention problem, your profitability goes down. I think training is absolutely vital to doing the best deals and to motivating your teams and keeping and retaining your staff. It's hugely expensive to lose people.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. One thing you just said, I read somewhere recently that there is a view, generally speaking, that everybody is about one position above their sort of optimum performance, because they're senior, you know, they're promoted out of what they're best at because they've been so good at it, and suddenly they're in management or they're playing a bigger
And you
role.
lose your talent pool.
Yeah,
You lose the doers.
yeah,
But I suppose that's often a solution. People want more money and they are stuck in a band, and the only way to increase your salary is to go to the next level.
yeah.
But I really think structured training is hugely beneficial, and there's a lack of it.
You've talked about empathy a lot. We have three sort of tenets, if you like, a structure to our approach to resolving any form of conflict. They're threefold: objectivity, empathy, and creativity. Which would you say was the most important one in your experience?
I'd give equal weight to all of them, to be honest. But actually, you know, creativity is really important when you're solving problems. And essentially, if you want to be seen to be solving someone's problem to get a deal over the line, and being creative in how you get there, it involves listening, it involves empathy, it involves being objective and stepping back and look at the facts. So, you know, for me, and when I say creativity, it doesn't mean you have to be good at painting. It's just thinking about things in a different way, and you know, how can we get this over? Because people aren't that creative, and they look to other people to solve their problems. So if you can solve it, brilliant, bingo.
You're a parent.
Yes.
Any of these skills apply to bringing up children?
Yes, but that'd probably all tell me that I had no emotional intelligence and was very bad at conflict and run away from it. But yes, obviously negotiating with teenagers, listening to them, making teenagers felt that they're heard, I think is a really key thing. Even if you don't like what you're hearing, they need to feel that they're being heard.
Yeah.
And that you're trying to understand, and then you can come up with your own sort of creative solutions, or talk it through. But yes, I definitely think the skills of listening and empathizing are vital when you're in the teenage phase.
Yes, absolutely. Last question. Do you prefer cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Every time?
Every time.
Excellent. All right. Nina Scales, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.